Hello, and welcome back to another episode of plantcare.club, where we care about your plants. My name is Fred. I've been in the horticultural space for about 6 years. We work with everything from spring annuals, garden mums, poinsettias, house plants. We send them across Canada and the United States. And what we try to do on the show is we use the experience that I have and that some of our other growers have in the greenhouse and give you information on how you can apply that to the plants at your own home. So on this show, we like to say we do three things. Number one, we talk about your plants, indoor and outdoor plants. Whatever you've got, we like to talk about them. Number two, we do product reviews. So we'll talk about soil, pots, fertilizer, whatever you are looking to get a little bit of more information on. We will do that on this show. And number three, we will answer your questions. So if you have any questions that come up while you're listening to this, please head over to plantcare.club. And on that link, you can find a section to fill out your question, send it in. We'll either reply to you over email or we will answer it on a following show. So today, what we want to talk about is why your houseplants may be having a tough time, houseplants or outdoor plants really, why they might be having a tough time, they might be showing some negative signs, some worse for wear, and you're wondering exactly what to do and what the cause is. So when we're going to approach a problem like this, I like to use the analogy of when you go to the doctor. And now bear with me if you've already heard this before, but when you go to the doctor, most of the time you come in and you say, hey, I got this problem with my foot, or I've got this problem with something else, and I need some help. And the doctor will look at you and say, okay, well, it could be this, it could be this, could be a number, let's say 3 or 4 things. So what I want you to do is I want you to try to change this little thing in the next 3 or 4 weeks. See if that changes something. If it does, great, we know that that was the problem. If it doesn't change something, then I want you to come back in, we'll reassess, and then we'll give you something new to do. So sometimes they'll give you a pill, and they'll say, hey, try to take this pill for a little while, and that might be the solution to your problem. Or they'll say, try to do these exercises, or they'll say, try to cut this food out of your diet. The doctors will come at you with a bunch of different solutions, potential solutions to your problem, and they do it systematically, where they do one step first, and then they'll take the next step, and then they'll take the next step to determine what the real problem is. Now, I'm not a doctor, but as far as I understand, the reason they do this is because if you change 4 things all at once and your problem goes away, you're faced with a new problem. The new problem is, what was the cause of my issue? What was the cause of my foot pain? We changed 4 different things. We changed my shoes, I have a pill, I cut broccoli out of my diet, and I cut my hair. And I don't know which one of those things really solved the problem. Well, when we're approaching your plant problems, we do the same approach. Or I encourage you to have the same approach, where you change one small thing with your plant, and you see if that fixes it. And if it doesn't, then you can take the next step, and then you can take the next step. So at the start, I believe that you should walk through a number of questions. And I'm going to run through some questions here with you. Walk through these questions and think, okay, is this potentially the cause of my problem? Have I done what Fred has mentioned here? And if I have, maybe I should change it. If I haven't, then I can move on to the next problem or the next question, and maybe that is the cause of my issue. Okay, so without further ado, okay, I'm just going to get straight into it here. We got a number of questions. Number 1, has the plant been moved? So if you are moving a plant from place to place in your home, it's likely that the plant is going to get different levels of light. So in one spot, you might think, oh, well, it's very close to a window, so it's fine. Well, you've got to think about what window it's on. Is it on the north side of your house, the south side, east side, west side? Is it going to get morning sun, or is it going to get afternoon sun? On the north side, it's going to get indirect sunlight. It'll get some, it'll get more indirect. It's much less intense. on the south side of your house, maybe it's getting direct sunlight straight through the window right onto the leaves. If your plant is growing and it's getting bigger and you think, okay, it's been in this perfect spot so far, but now it doesn't fit on my shelf or it doesn't fit on the countertop over here. I want to move it somewhere else that makes more sense. Totally fine. But with those kind of movements, a plant can go into what is known as shock. I've given this example in the past, but I know someone that was moving a monstera from their house to a friend's house. And while they were driving there, so they take the monstera out of their home, it's been on the north side of the house, getting some indirect sunlight, and it's been loving life. 6-inch pot, so when they put it into their car, they set it on the dash of the car because there was a bunch of stuff going on in the back of their car. So they set it on the dash for some reason. They went in and they got some groceries. They were in there for a lot longer than they thought they were going to be at Costco. They come out, and when they give the plant to their friend, the plant had already gone into a little bit of shock, and within the first week or so, that plant had developed some burns on the leaves. And this is likely due to being set directly under the dash with the direct sun coming straight down, hitting the leaves and burning those leaves. The leaf is not made to, or it's not been accustomed to that environment that it's been put into. And now all of a sudden it's going into shock. It's saying, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. I'm going to get rid of these cells. I'm going to get rid of this leaf. I'm going to get rid of whatever I need to in order to survive. So if you have moved your plant, think about the light that it's getting. Another thought is, okay, well, how warm is it? Are you moving it from beside a furnace or beside a heater? Maybe if you have something like a wood stove in your house or electric baseboards that provide heat to a certain area, that can cause a different fluctuation in heat if you move it from one area to another spot. Let's say at some points over the night, the pot and the actual soil is warm. Well, that's going to encourage that plant to keep growing. It's going to encourage that plant to keep on moving. But if you move it to another place in the house that's cooler, the soil can be cold overnight. And when the soil is cold overnight, the plant goes, "Oh no, I don't love this too much. I'm not going to grow as much over the course of the night and into the morning." So think about those factors as well. If you've ever moved the plant, if you have, another big one here, outside to inside. So sometimes you say, oh, I got this plant, I throw it out on my porch during the summer, and then I bring it in during the winter. Awesome idea. That's great. Don't be surprised if when you bring it in, it goes into shock. Because there's so much light it's absorbing outside. When it comes inside, it's going to have that kind of an effect. A common one for this is, let's say, Boston ferns or Kimberleys. Some people try to overwinter their outdoor plants. And when they bring them in, that plant is getting used to the balance of having so much sunlight, fertilizer, everything going on all at the same time out on your deck. And when you bring it inside, it's now getting less sunlight. So now it needs less fertilizer. It needs less water. It also might need less leaves. Because it has so many leaves, it wants to soak up all the sunlight that it's getting. Well, now it has less light, so it needs less leaves. So it tries to drop some of those bottom leaves. So think about those factors. If you've moved it in the past, that could be the cause of your problem. Next up, I've got water. So have you changed the frequency of your watering? Have you changed? And now this can be either a good thing or a bad thing. If you've increased it, that's totally fine. If you're moving into, let's say, the summer, your house is warmer, outdoors. If it's in the summer, then yeah, you really have to increase your watering frequency. If it's indoors in the summer, sometimes it can be a little bit warmer in your house. So yeah, you could increase your watering frequency. But if it is the winter and maybe you forgot that you watered it on Wednesday and you end up watering it on Thursday or Friday, well, that could be the problem. Maybe the plant is waterlogged. Maybe it has too much water in that pot. Another thought is the quality of your water. So this is harder to get at, and it would require some more testing. You'd have to go a little bit deeper. But if the quality of the water, let's say maybe the water filter in your basement, if you have a filter down there or something like that, if that is clogged up or needs to be changed, then it's not catching as much bacteria as is going through that water filter. Or even through a water, if you're on town water, that can cause a bit of a problem. If they say, oh, we want to change the pH level in the water, or if there's something going on, maybe it's the winter water to summer water, all of those kind of things can cause a change in your houseplants. So keep that in mind. That could be part of the issue. So next up, if you're sitting in the doctor's office with your plant and you're saying, Doc, what's wrong with it? Next up, he might say fertilizer. So do you fertilize your plant? And what kind of fertilizer do you use for your plant? If you do not fertilize your plant and you're starting to see some yellow leaves, it's very possible that that could be the reason for your issues. If you do fertilize your plant, have you been giving it more fertilizer? Have you been giving it the same level of fertilizer all the way into the winter months that you did, and you did the same thing in the summer months? That could be part of the problem as well, because you could have so many nutrients built up in the soil, the plant can't get through it all, and now it's just really, really charged down there. There's so much in there, and it'll start to burn the leaves and actually have a negative effect on the roots if there's too much fertilizer in that pot. So that could be part of your issue. Have you changed the type of fertilizer that you are using? So sometimes we have summer fertilizer or winter fertilizer. You've got fertilizer that is made to encourage the plant to grow, and you have fertilizer that's made to encourage the plant. That is way too intense, or it would take me way too long to go through all of that. I'm going to make that a completely separate episode in the future. So if you're interested on that, go to plantcare.club, search fertilizer, and we'll probably have that episode up as well. Okay, grow lights. Grow lights is my next one. Do you use grow lights, and how often are they on? When I see people with grow lights, sometimes they will set their lights for a certain number of hours, and they're constantly on, which is okay. That's an okay thing to do, but it can make your plant lazy. And I know I've mentioned this in the past. You don't want your plant to be lazy. You don't want the roots to be lazy. You don't want it to be lazy because it says, I'm always going to get 12 hours of light. You need your plant, you want to encourage your plant to adapt to the different situations that it's in, and when it's going into the summer versus when it's going into the winter. It also should be able to adapt to the natural light as well as the grow lights. So, for example, in the greenhouse, grow lights are usually used in the first, let's say, from January until March or April, depending on the type of crop, when the hours of sunlight that you get during the day are relatively short. Then throughout the summer, grow lights are often not used. It's very unlikely that the grow lights are used through the summer in a greenhouse. Now, this depends on exactly where you are in the northern hemisphere. If you're very far north in Canada, you might get 16, 18 hours of light. If you're very far south in the US, you're probably set much closer to your 12, 14 hours of light per day. So you're going to have to do a little bit more research in that way. But grow lights could be the reason that your plant is maybe staying stagnant. It's not doing very well. It's just sort of blah. It's not moving too much. That could be part of the reason, because it's being lazy. It's not being encouraged to move. Next up, I have your plant's age. So how old is your plant? Now, a key note to think about here is if you get I will say an 8-inch or larger pot, okay? 8-inch or bigger, that plant has probably it was probably stuck, rooted, and shipped in the last, say, 8 months. 8 months at the, maybe a year to, I'll say 6 months at the shortest, depending on what type of crop that is. Now, I'm being very, very generic there. Like, there's so many different types of crops that I'd say Majesty palms usually take about a year to grow, and then you can get away with some foliage items in about 6 months if you need to. Sometimes even up to 4, but that's a little bit less common. So, okay, if you've got that range there, sometimes those plants have not been through a winter in your area. So if you're up in Canada, it's very unlikely that it's been through a winter in your area. Now, why is this important? Well, if it's a 10-inch pot, and that plant has grown up for the last 1 year in Florida, it's used to hot, humid, It's used to being watered every day from top down. It's used to the conditions that it actually has in a nursery in a commercial environment like that. And now you're sending it all the way up to Canada, and it's sitting in your home, and it's only going to get 6 hours or 8 hours of sunlight during the day, and it's all indirect. Well, that's an enormous shock. That's a crazy shock for this plant to go through. So it can make a lot of sense for that plant to go from looking great to looking a little bit worse through the winter, because it has to go through that period of, okay, we're going to do very well, and then we're going to do a little bit worse, and very well, and a little bit worse. That's what you're stuck with when you have those long days long nights and shorter days in the winter period. So if your plant is older, it's possible that it hasn't been through a winter and it's simply learning the conditions, it's adapting to the conditions that are around it. If you have a smaller plant, if you have like a 2.5 inch up to say 6 inch, that plant might only be a few months old, and at that point it will be more used to reacting to the conditions in the winter. So it might not have been being in Florida or California, depending on where you are. It might not have been in these commercial nurseries for so long. It could have only been there for a few months, and therefore it hasn't been through all that time in a commercial nursery environment, so it can adapt a little bit faster in your house. Okay, your home temp. How warm is your house? This is a little bit less of a factor overall because most of us just have a thermostat that's set. But sometimes in your house it can get a little bit warmer in the summer and a little bit cooler in the winter. If you are trying to save some money, and let's say in the summer you let the temperature creep up a bit, and then in the winter you let the temperature drop down a little bit, think about the difference between the temperature in your home versus the temperature that that plant might have been living in at the nursery. At the nursery, the temperature could have been at, let's say, 22, 23 Celsius sometimes, depending on where it is exactly and what type of crop. And if you keep your house at even 17, sounds a little bit chilly, but even if it's like 17 degrees, then yeah, that plant could go into a little bit of shock as it moves from one spot to the other. It's common for poinsettias to go through this because poinsettias are usually grown in some warmer climate. They like the temperature. They're native to Mexico, so they like the warm, they like the heat. And if the grower has been trying to push that plant on and say, hey, I need a little bit more height out of these poinsettias, I'm going to keep my greenhouse warmer, it goes to the retailer, and then it comes to you. There could be a 5-degree swing, and that's a really big swing for a plant. That's a very big swing for that plant to really go through. So has your house changed in temperature a lot? That could be part of the problem. And maybe what you have to do there is, okay, you have to keep things a little bit more of a steady rate. Bugs if you see any bugs, this can definitely be your problem. Absolutely, it could be your problem. If you take your leaf, you flip your leaf over, you look at the bottom of it. If you see any little white dots, if you see something that's maybe it's crawling on there, if it's a white fly, if it flies away, if it's black, there's tons of different bugs. It could be little green ones, little aphids that are crawling around here and there that are eating things. There's so much you can go into with bugs. I'll make another episode just specifically on some of the most common house pests and the pests that can attack them. Keep in mind, if you've had your plant outside and then you move it inside, it can bring bugs inside with it. Very easily, it can have bugs that are outside, bring it in. Now it's spreading through your house. They're so small, you might not even be able to see it. There can be bugs that fly into the screens through an open window. There can be bacteria that's simply in the soil, that's living in some of the water. It can eat away at the soil and the roots. Or it could have come when you bought your recent houseplant. So if you've had no problems at all, you haven't brought anything from outside in, everything's totally fine, but you just got a new plant from the store, well, that plant could have come with bugs. There's no commercial nursery that is absolutely perfect that never gets any bugs. It's constantly something that every greenhouse and nursery is trying to fight against are the bugs to keep their plants clean. Sometimes there can be problems, and if there are problems, it's not impossible for a bug to go all the way from the nursery to your home. So if you bring something in, or if you're looking at it at the store, make sure you flip those bottom leaves over. Check to see if there's any bugs. Shake the plant a little bit. See if anything comes out, because that could be your problem and your issue. Okay, so if you said, nope, I don't think that any of these things are it. I don't think that any of these are it, and I don't know exactly where to go from here. Well, what you can do is you can go to the next level. I don't think I've done anything. I will make sure that I touch on EC, electroconductivity, when I talk about fertilizer. So look for that episode as well. If you go to plantcare.club, interested, look for EC. So pH and EC. If you are very interested, you can go ahead and try to get a pH meter or an EC meter. Now, I've covered it before, but you can look up how exactly to make the right solution, then dip this meter into the solution to test exactly what the EC, electroconductivity, how many nutrients, what is in your soil, and what your plant can draw. That's very important. Maybe you don't have enough nutrients in your soil. Maybe you have way too much. Both of those things can cause a problem with your plants and can really kill them, or can cause problems here. pH as well. pH is too high, pH is too low. Both of those cannot allow your plant to soak up the nutrients that are in the soil. If you don't want to buy a tester, but you still are really interested in it and you want to find out, maybe you're saying, I'm a really good plant parent and I want to take the best care. I'm so interested in what's going on. The last step, and what some commercial growers and greenhouses will do, is they will take some plants to their local university or college, and generally they have a horticultural division there. You might have to Google around. I guess not every university and college has it, but there are ones that will have a lab that can take your plant. Maybe they take a few leaves off, maybe they take a bunch of soil out, they look at the roots, they do this and that. It costs sometimes around $100, and they'll send you a report back that says, hey, here's what was wrong with your plant, here's any diseases that we found, here's what the EC was, the pH. They'll go through this really, really intense report to give you some information on exactly what was wrong with your plant. So I'm hoping that this analogy of the doctor and how to solve some of these problems has landed. And believe me, these are not all the questions. These are a bunch of the questions that you can ask yourself. There are a ton more questions that you can go through in order to check all of the boxes. But these are some of the most common ones that we could come up with. If you have any questions while you are listening to this, please head over to plantcare.club. We've got a lot more resources there, blog posts, past episodes, different interviews that we've done. So please head over there, send in your questions so that we can either send you an email answer or answer it on the show. And until next time, thank you for listening. Talk to you again soon.